I think when you can lean into those strengths and lean into the right environments and working out what those environments are, because not every environment is a supportive one, um, you start to feel so much more freer and so much more just like weight off your shoulders. Like you can finally breathe and you can finally just be unapologetically you. And it's the best feeling in the world.
Welcome to Season 2 of ADHD Difference. I'm your host, Julie Legg, ADHD advocate, author of The Missing Piece, A Woman's Guide to Understanding, Diagnosing and Living with ADHD, and an unapologetic doer of many things. This season, we're turning up the volume with a global lineup of brilliant guests, bringing their lived experiences, insights, research, strategies, and resources. And of course, along with a healthy dose of humour and humility. Whether you're neurodivergent yourself or just curious, there's something here for every curious brain. Let's dive in. Meet Kayla Oughton, an AuDHD coach based out of Napier, New Zealand, with a wild range of experience behind her. Certified in ADHD-informed coaching, health coaching, personal development and suicide prevention, as well as being a qualified project manager in commercial construction. Her journey has taken her down the entrepreneurial path post-ADHD diagnosis with a recent venture into digital marketing, dedicated to making other late-diagnosed women not feel alone in their journey. This is a conversation about untangling old stories, what ADHD really looks like behind closed doors, and how we move from self-blame to self-trust. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Kayla.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Right. There was a time where you genuinely believed that you were broken or too lazy or sensitive and incapable of doing life the way other people around you seem to be doing it so effortlessly. So looking back now, how do you understand your undiagnosed ADHD self? And what were those experiences or patterns or breaking points that eventually led you to seek a diagnosis at 35?
Yeah, I think it started around when I was 30, probably. Just seeing friends, starting to buy houses. They were starting to get married. They were climbing the career ladder in their stable jobs that they'd had for years. And it was like, oh, I can't do any of that. Like, what's wrong with me? And that was when those kind of questions really started to, I guess, play on my conscious a bit. So I started to look into it a bit more to be like, well, what is going on here? And so I started down a path of self-development first, actually. So I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm gonna learn all about myself, and I'm going to be fixed. I'll suddenly have everything together, and I didn't. But I learned a lot about myself, and I'm so grateful I kind of did do that path first, because it helped me, I guess, process a lot of the other things that were going on in my life as well. And so I started to look into a bit more around my own health and well-being, and kind of little bit by bit by bit. And it was another probably 3 or 4 years before I thought, okay, maybe therapy, like let's try therapy. So, went down that path. And it was while I was in therapy, I think I might have been maybe 5 or 6 months into therapy, when my therapist asked me the question that changed my life. She asked, she was flicking back through her notes, and she goes, oh, I need to ask you a question here. Are you diagnosed ADHD? And I remember laughing and saying, oh, no, I'm not fidgety. And she looked at me like very clearly. She was like, well, for starters, you can't sit still. And she's thinking, that's not actually all it is, And so we started digging a bit deeper, and worked on rejection sensitivity, because that was what triggered that question from my therapist. So yeah, and then it was another year to get the diagnosis, because just wait lists and all that sort of stuff. Um, and yeah, unpacking rejection sensitivity in particular was huge. It was huge. And I think once I learned about RSD, a whole lot made sense, probably more so than any other trait of ADHD. So yeah, it was a bit of a journey. I
Wow.
think we're up to about 7 years now.
And for having a therapist or someone else actually point out what seemed to be relatively obvious to them, but kind of news to you, that must have been an experience.
It was, and I thank my lucky stars that I had a therapist who's ADHD, which I did not know at that time. So she just spotted the behavior probably faster than I guess, a lot of other people would have, because she recognized it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very grateful.
Kayla, as a female in a predominantly male area of construction, you were undiagnosed at that point in time. Would you be able to share what life was like for you and how your undiagnosed ADHD self may have shown in that situation?
Yeah, so I was a commercial construction project manager. I climbed my way up pretty quickly through the ranks in construction. Um, and knowing what I know now about neurodivergence, I can confidently, hand on heart, say that I firmly believe about 75, 85% of construction probably fall into that same bracket. And I always felt really at home on the building sites, rather than in the office. I always felt really accepted, and I understood the tradies, the ones on the sites, because typically speaking, and this is going against a lot of stereotypes here, but true, is that a lot of them perhaps didn't do so well in the school environment, so they went into the trades. They were really good with their hands. They were creative. They liked being outside. They're problem solvers. Like, there's all of those extraordinary strengths and traits that they have that do very well in that industry. However, on the flip side, you have an industry that is incredibly high pressure, very low support, almost non-existent training, or professional development. Um, you have a lot of people in roles that should not be in those roles. So they were hired because they were maybe someone's brother or uncle or dad, um, or maybe they were just the admin person who'd just been with the company for 20 years. So suddenly they're HR. Um, and that's really rampant in that industry. Um, so you have a lot of unregulated, undiagnosed, unsupported people in a fast paced, high pressure, high stakes industry. No wonder the suicide rates are so high. No wonder. And I firmly, having worked in construction for, I did almost 10 years. I was in Melbourne and in Napier, Hastings, Napier here. I've worked from the client point of view, from the main contractor point of view, from the subcontractor point of view, and I've rinsed, repeat, done different cycles. I've job hopped. I'm not ashamed to admit that. That's my ADHD kicking in. So there were parts of it that I absolutely loved. I loved the chaos. I loved that no 2 days are the same. I loved that you were constantly thrown in the deep end, and that sink or swim mentality is very strong in construction. They often throw around, oh, you got to have a thick skin to be in this industry, and you do, you really do, because there is no support anywhere. And it's just this melting pot of like personalities, of egos, of like just absolute utter chaos. Like, I used to joke that I was a professional cat herder, because like I was, and I loved it. So like, on one side of it, my ADHD was an absolute godsend, like, because I thrived. I absolutely thrived at it. The other side where it didn't thrive was the admin, the boring contracts. I was a project manager. I didn't want to look at contracts. Turns out that's a really big part of my job. Reading specifications, like boring, no, thank you. And I didn't care enough. I wasn't interested enough in the technicality and like the specifications of things. So a lot of the technical side of stuff would just go straight over my head. But I was extraordinary with people management. So as a project manager, I actually did quite well because I brought those people in around me and I brought them up. Every single meeting I went to, if I was going to meet with the client engineers, like, the high consultants or whatever, every single meeting, if I could, I brought my foreman in with me or the main builder, like whoever it was that was going to be physically doing the work. And that kind of connection went a long way with those people because they were brought in at the table. Their opinion counted, their opinion mattered, right? Because I didn't know. I was like, well, I'm not the qualified builder, you are. I'm here to connect the dots. And that was unusual. That was unusual practice. And it was an interesting time. It was a really interesting time. Throwing the fact that I was a woman. And I'm a qualified, like I went to university and got a degree in project management in construction, and I would still be questioned. I would still be, oh, you're just too emotional, rah, because I think my justice sensitivity had a field day. My PDA, my ODD, like it all just was like a kid in the candy store, basically. Which made me a really good advocate for the workers. And that's what led to me going down the suicide prevention path, was because it was like, there's a problem here and no one's talking about it. No one's doing anything about it. So I wanted to be part of the solution going forward rather than part of the problem, because I was the problem. I was the one putting the timelines, the deadlines, the pressure, the financial pressure. Like that was my role. So I couldn't do it anymore. So I burnt out with construction quite spectacularly because it was just so long trying to square peg round hole it.
With the suicide prevention work, how did that occur?
It was a Mates for Life. It's a Hawke's Bay not-for-profit charity set up, and they go into workplaces and they train people on suicide intervention and prevention. So it's around recognizing the signs. It's around asking the question, are you thinking about suicide? And then what to do with the answer, basically. So it was, it wasn't on the crisis end. It was more on the prevention side of things. And I got into it because I myself have had suicidal ideation and experiences all through my life. And I always knew I wasn't depressed, like the doctors would say. I was like, no, it's like a bounce back. And then the more I learned about it, and the more I learned about rejection sensitive dysphoria in particular, it was like, oh, that was probably it. It was kind of my own journey of being like, why am I like this? Why do I have these incredible lows? Why do I sink so low instantly? But sometimes a couple hours later, I'm all good. Like, what is that? Like, what? And that's, like, am I bipolar? Like, what's wrong with me? But no, every single time I was triggered by something. And it was, now I know what it is, that rejection sensitivity. It's like, gosh, more people need to know about this because it's going to save lives. And I firmly believe, like, again, just from my own experience and from what I've seen and from the research I've read and the, the statistics you look at around particularly ADHD and autism around suicide are horrendous. Are really, really high. So I think that rejection sensitivity or just that overwhelm, emotional overwhelm and that shutdown, I think they play a big part in those numbers.
Now, you're a neurodiversity coach, and you're also known for cutting through the fluff. And for late diagnosed ADHDers especially, there's often decades of shame to unpack before strategies can even land. And in your coaching work, what helps people untangle those deeply held beliefs of being lazy or unreliable or being too much?
I mean, knowledge is power, right? And I probably nearly every single person I've coached, you get the initial chat, like, okay, what's going on? What's the problem? And then it's like, well, hang on a minute, let's peel it back. Like, what do you actually know about ADHD? And starting from that place of like, no assumptions, it's just, right, I might be telling you to suck eggs here, but let's just pull it back to like the executive functions. Let's pull it back to, what's actually happening in your brain, what might be behind some of these struggles, right? And I think when you can put that lens on it, it really helps to soften the blow, like, for lack of a better term, of, yeah, no wonder you struggle with these things because you're literally wired differently. So let's try and build, the structure and support systems around it. But that awareness is huge, and and I can hear it. I can hear it really quickly of where somebody's at on their journey. And I notice that I coach a lot of autistics as well, and I always laugh. I've only really picked up on it lately, but the autistics have done the research. They've gone down the rabbit holes. They know all about their neurodivergence. Whereas the ADHD, they tend to not. They tend to be a bit more higher level, or they've maybe heard one or two things, so it's quite fun kind of getting to meet them where they are at that journey, but pull it back to just like, right, let's just go back to the basics and then we can start. And that, I think that having that level of understanding and awareness is massive for going forward.
Mm. And I guess, we tell ourselves there's a standard narrative, and then there's our own narrative, our own story. So, how do you help clients kind of separate who they are from the narratives they've inherited about productivity and success and their own personal value, their own worth?
Um, yeah, I think it just comes back to awareness for one. And I think as well, because I've done a lot of work in self-development, like personal development, I also worked as a health coach for a year. So I'm a certified health coach, and I did suicide prevention work as well. So I'm quite good at kind of picking up on the negative, like the self-talk or the that the stuff that they're not saying, maybe, or the things that they're avoiding, and I can pull it out of people in a safe, trauma informed way. And I think that approach puts me in quite a unique blend, because it's like, okay, well, hang on a minute, like, yes, you may be struggling with ADHD, but how's your sleep? What's going on? Like, where's your nutrition? What movement are you getting in your day? Like, I can really pull back at that holistic point of view and like, okay, well, how's your stress? Like, let's look at that bigger picture. Are you stuck in a job you hate? Like, cool, let's look into, like, maybe we need to explore other options for you. Like, it's really, I think I kind of pull it away from the diagnosis and the traits and the symptoms as such, and pull it back to like the person, the environment, and the situation. And I think that's where you start to get that different story they can start to tell themselves, because that's what helped me.
It's having this different perspective on your past as well, too, isn't it? Because if you keep telling yourself the same old, well, this happened and this is why, but just having a different lens, as you said earlier, really, really important. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I it's something I always come back to, and this was taught a lot in suicide intervention, was you did what you could at the time with the tools you had, right? Like, you did the best you could, and you can't change that. But going forward, if you've got more tools and more knowledge, and like, that's where the change can happen. So like, there's that separation of like, you before diagnosis versus after, or like, what you can do with the knowledge going forward, but accepting that, things were different. Like, even 5-10 years ago, the knowledge and the education, I mean, it's still not really there, which is a lot of, what the work that we do, right? Like, it's putting that knowledge out there. So it's like, you can't beat yourself up for something that you didn't even know. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So that's okay.
I love that saying. I say that all the time. And also, this knowledge is really evolving all the time, isn't it? There's all new
Oh,
studies coming out all the
always.
time, and which is, yeah, very, very exciting.
Hmm.
You've helped others untangle so many of these old narratives, and you're supporting others to do the same. You've done it yourself. What's really exciting you at the moment in the work that you're doing right now?
I recently started, I guess, digging a bit more into my autistic side because I'm not officially diagnosed autism. I tick a lot of boxes, and the more I coach autistic people, the more I'm like, oh, I do that. And it's actually been quite an amazing, like, my own evolving going through of coaching and recognizing, like, oh, actually, if I step into my own truth, into my own voice, into my own power, I actually need to acknowledge both parts of me, along with all the other bits and bobs. And I feel like stepping into that level has been really exciting for me because I can't separate the two. Like, it's me. So whereas I felt before, I always felt a bit restricted or restrained, like solely talking about ADHD, and I was like, oh, it just doesn't quite feel right, And now stepping into that side of it, so I've been really excited about it, and I think as well, like, I share a lot on social media, and just seeing the overwhelming amount of predominantly women who, leave comments saying, gosh, you've just explained me, or this resonates, like, and that's really rewarding just to go, yeah, you're not alone. You're not going crazy. This is a thing, and this is what helped me. And that's been really lovely. It's been exciting.
Can we briefly talk about ADHD and autism together? And you've had a lot of experience in that with your clients and with your
Mhm.
own lived experiences. My understanding is sometimes the ADHD traits and autism traits can be opposites, and yet you're the one and the same person, and you're kind of autism traits, ADHD traits. Sometimes there can be quite a battle when it comes to
Yes.
executive functioning or focus and the rest. Can you briefly sort of add your thoughts onto that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so as I say, like, I'm not officially diagnosed, but it was once I had my ADHD diagnosis, and I went down the medication path along with coaching and therapy and exercise and nutrition and all the things. And I remember about 6 months later thinking, oh, things have just gotten really hard all of a sudden. Like, I was starting to feel on top of the ADHD, and oh, okay, I'm getting the hang of this. And then I had this huge regression. Um, and it was the sensory side of things just started to become so overwhelming and so loud, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I remember being like, it was an emotional moment of like, oh my gosh, has this been here this whole time? Like, no wonder I was so unregulated and so just never felt like I fit in or any of that sort of stuff. Because to this day, I still think my ADHD is the louder neurodivergence. It's definitely the more predominant, um, which, I'm thankful for in a lot of ways. There's a lot of wild experiences that I would probably have never had. I'm a big risk taker, and I'm very creative, and I'm, all those really good things. But it's probably taken me about 18 months almost to kind of reconcile that, oh, hang on, there's this other side of me that needs that transition with change, that needs the really quiet wind down. It's not the social bunny. It's, it does interactions on a small scale and then needs to retreat. It's the one that likes to eat the same meal every single day. It's the one that likes to wear the same clothes every single day. Like, there's that little battle, and it really is like you wake up and it does feel a bit Jekyll and Hyde, like, okay, who's taking control today? And like, I've really learnt and this has been a really hard lesson to learn, but rest is so important. And the more I learn about autism and that side of things, and just ADHD in general, you know, I can't be 100 miles an hour 24/7. I can't. So I'm really learning to pull it back. And unfortunately, they don't often match up. So it's trying to find that balance of like, okay, I've had a really big few productive days, like a good few days where I'm like, man, I'm on fire. I'm killing it. You know, I'm smashing goals. I now know there's going to be a crash. So I allow for them now. So like when I'm in those big productive, like my beast modes, I call them, and I know that there'll be slug days. That's what I call them. So they're my days where I literally don't want to speak to anyone. I just want comfort. I want cozy. I want quiet. And I need to have those. So I try, and it's probably still going to take me another year, if I'm honest, of getting it right. But it's a journey. And you never know.
Definitely. A work in progress, absolutely. But by identifying that rest is really important for you, that's an amazing start, and you can add them into your day or your routine as much as possible. Fabulous.
Yeah.
What is an example of a system, not necessarily a mindset, but a system that can dramatically change how ADHDers, or a combo of ADHD and autism, experience daily life behind closed doors? So what's going to change how they work when no one else is watching?
Go with your energy. And I think that could be possibly more the autistic side as well coming in, but I think that has probably been the one that has helped me the most, is that I go with the flow. And if the flow isn't there that day, that's okay. It will come back. And that has taken a lot of work to really unpack that, because when the flow is not there, the natural thing is to, oh my God, you're useless. Why can't you do this? You know, like that critical, loud, mean voice gets up, and like I say, like actually factoring in that rest side of things. And so when I say go with the energy, it's like if something feels good, do it. You know, like if it's not a full body yes, then it's a no. I've been learning to really lean into my nervous system a bit more, and to really pay attention to my body, which I encourage everybody that I work with to really, you know, like I always talk about it, especially from the ADHD side of things. It's that restlessness, it's that skin crawling. And whenever I say that, people go, oh yeah, they know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm like, that is your signal to move. That's your body telling you it needs to move in whatever way, shape, or form. So whether that's jumping on the spot, vigorously vacuuming, dancing, going for a walk, gym, whatever it might be, you know, it doesn't need to be a full-on body pumping 200 kgs kind of session, right? Like it's just moving your body. And like, so listening to those body cues, because that tells you kind of where the good is and where it's not. And that can get quite tricky with workplaces in particular, you know. Not every workplace is fully accommodating or is possibly the right fit for people. So something I really encourage people to is to really listen, to pick up on those things of like, if you're coming home cognitively exhausted so much that you can't even cook, can't even, you know, and if you know that there are certain days of the week, maybe you have, you know, maybe Monday's like your big meetings day, maybe, you know, Wednesday it's like client facing, whatever it is, right? There'll be some kind of rhythm. There'll be some kind of pattern to the work that you will know some will drain you and some will light you up, and start to really pay attention to those things. And that is how you find your rhythm and your strength going forward. And like I said before, you know, like because you can't always control when the slug days are going to hit. You just can't. You might be bum, 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 and then sit down for your coffee and boom, the energy's gone. So it's about, okay, can I rearrange my calendar on those days to have, more of the monotonous kind of low-hanging fruit kind of work, and save the big creative stuff for the other days, or like whatever it might be. So yeah, just really very long-winded way of saying just tap into the body, because your body will be telling you what it wants to do. And I think we just try and push through because that's what, normal productivity stuff tells us we should do. But that's not how our brains work. We work in sprints, not marathons.
Love it. Great advice for beast days and slug days. I think that's marvelous. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
So what happens when, again, with old narratives resurface, say, like I'm failing, or I should be able to do this better, or what's wrong with me? What's a practical way you help ADHDers interrupt that spiral and respond with maybe more self-trust or more self-compassion?
Something I like to do, and I catch people constantly on the calls or the coaching, and I catch myself. I always stress to people, like, I do this all the time. It's still something I practice daily. Is when those thoughts creep in of like, like I didn't get this done. Hang on a minute, what have I just done? Because we have that like success amnesia, right? Like we forget all the things that we've actually just managed to achieve. And especially when you throw in, the beast to slug days, like those high productivity days, we can put out phenomenal amounts of work, and it's normally incredibly high quality. It's normally under a lot of pressure because we've left it to last minute or it's on a deadline. Like that takes a lot of cognitive energy. And I like to think of it, when you do have those little slumps, to actually, whether it's you're writing it down or even just thinking about it, like, oh, hang on a minute, what did I get done this week? And just that little practice of like, as soon as that critic rears up, it's like, thank you, but shush. I know you're just trying to keep me safe here or whatever it is, but this is actually what I've done, and I'm actually just tired. I'm cognitively tired right now, and I need this rest. And so I try and teach that phrase really of like cognitive exhaustion or cognitively tired, because we talk about like the mental load and the emotional load, and you hear that kind of thrown around a lot. And it's like, but what about the cognitive load? Like the existing in these brains takes a lot of energy. Trying to have this conversation even with you, and I can see my dog in the background, the car down the road, like I'm present with you, but it takes a lot of energy. And so like really, and again, I think that's the education piece, right? Of like bringing it back to people to say, well, hang on a minute, like, whoa, pump the brakes. Just us having this conversation is taking a lot of energy. Be kinder on yourself. And like, it's just reducing that shame, because you can see it in their face as they start to talk to you. They withdraw into themselves, and maybe they start to speak a bit lower, or like, you pick up on those things. It's like, oh, hang on a minute, whoa, let's bring it up. Literally sit up, deep breath, whatever it needs to be. Do I need to stand and do a little shake of a dance, like let it out, like whatever it is, and just then progress forward. But just catching it in that moment is really powerful. Like that pause, the power of the pause, so powerful.
Back to acknowledging achievements. My husband and I have this thing that we do every New Year's Eve, and we're actually not looking ahead. For the moment, we pause and we look back at the last year and say, what have we been up to? And it's exhausting. Oh gosh, we did this and we did that and we did this in the garden and we started this business or whatever it may be. And it's so awesome to stop and actually reflect. And perhaps maybe we could do that a bit more often than once a year. But rather than being too bogged down in goals and goals and goals, but just to stop and pause and enjoy the successes. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it gets confused with people think, oh, but I didn't have these big milestones. It's like, no, but you managed to get up every morning. Like you made your lunches that week. Well done. And like really pull it back to just the small things. And I think because those small things, especially from an ADHD point of view, are normally the ones that trip us up the most. So when you can even just celebrate the little wins, and to bring it back to like, well, hang on a minute, you got yourself to work every single day. The little wins, but also acknowledging, actually, yeah, I did start 3 businesses because a lot of ADHDers probably have a list like that.
For someone who's listening who still believes, quietly and privately behind closed doors, that they're the problem, what would you most want them to know about ADHD, self-worth, and the possibility of doing life differently?
You're not broken. I'm sure probably most people on this you've interviewed have said that, but ADHD is nothing to be fixed. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be scared of. And when it's embraced and when it's supported and when it's, loved and encouraged, it can be phenomenal. And I think that needs to come from an internal point of view. There needs to be that inner acceptance of like, yeah, I am spectacular. I have these incredible strengths. Yes, I might struggle with getting to work on time, and I keep saying that one because that's one of mine. But once I'm there, I'm phenomenal. And it's. I think when you can lean into those strengths and lean into the right environments and working out what those environments are, because not every environment is a supportive one, you start to feel so much more freer and so much more just like weight off your shoulders. Like you can finally breathe and you can finally just be unapologetically you. And it's the best feeling in the world. And I cannot stress that enough to so many people that I talk to. And I think being a coach, and one of the number one things I'm asked about, as soon as you mention ADHD, right, it's medication. People want to know, is it going to fix me? Is it going to cure me? Like, no, it just means you'll be able to focus a bit better. Like, it's nothing to be fixed, like it's just like, and I stress that so much. It's not something that needs fixing.
Well, you've been a delight to chat to today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and perspectives there. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.